15 years ago, the events of life awakened her to the reality that the Ghanaian communal storytelling was gradually becoming an endangered art form. She then started a movement to revive and document Ghanaian community storytelling for posterity. Out of this movement, she established the Lododo Art Foundation, which embraces storytelling, experimental theater, advocacy, Ghanaian language proficiency, cultural activism, and on a whole, as a mentoring organization to help young artists find their voices. She's currently artistic director of the foundation. Dr. Dogbaji has worked in various communities in Ghana to get the people to revive storytelling culture. She has documented over 1,000 stories in audio-visual format. Shall we give it up for her? Leonard Atauge Kabalwe is the founder of OBL Studios, where he serves as the director, writer, and producer of some of the most memorable films of the past decade, including Gonda, Sheje, Bienyi, Pieli, and Gandu. He is a multi-talented artist, skilled in shooting, directing, editing, and VFX, special effects, and is known for his unwavering dedication to perfecting his craft. Leonard is a highly acclaimed professional with a distinguished career as an award-winning filmmaker and public health nutritionist. Shall we give it up for him? So at this point, I think they would share with us what they do. And I would first go to Dr. Dogbaji, who would introduce herself and her art form.
Ago again. You know everything about me already. He has said it, so I will tell you a story. What shall I talk about? The stories are many. But I will tell you, because it's a festival, I will tell you a story about names so that we all know what our names are. Okay. Who has seen a cat and a dog playing together here in Ghana? Oh, I see. I need to visit where you saw them, because that will be a tourist site. Because in Ghana here, cats and dogs are not friends. You know me so. I will tell you how they became enemies. A very, 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 very long time ago. Shall I or shall I not tell you? Shall I?
You shall.
I am telling you. Now, that very, very long time ago, Doctor, trees could talk and walk. Yeah. And stones could marry and have conversations. So that was a very, 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 very long time ago. This cat and this dog were very good friends. They worked together and they made very good money. They became wealthy and they decided, as they say, behind, I don't know why not in front of or beside, every successful man is a woman. And so they decided to go and find for themselves wives. A good idea, isn't it? Oh, we have to tell the story together, so you have to respond to me. Is that a good idea?
Yes.
So they traveled a long way to find their wives. When they arrived, it was dark. They got there at night. So they decided to check into an inn. Maybe today we'll call it Airbnb. So that in the morning, they can find their spouses. They can find themselves wives. As they were sleeping, the air in the room was mixed with the aroma of very good soup. Well prepared too. It's a kind of soup you will call United Nations, yes? And on top of it, garnished or laced with prekese. So you know. The flavor, the aroma kept coming and coming. Where is this? But the kitchen was just next door. And so the dog became very, very restless. Because, Charlie, the aroma was calling for a tasting. And so he opened the windows. The cat woke up and said, Charlie, what are you doing? He said, it's getting stuffy. The air must come inside. Fresh air, fresh air. He said, you, just be careful. We are strangers here. He opened the windows. Cat went to sleep. What did human being do? He jumped out of the window and followed the flavor and entered the kitchen. He looked. He opened it. It was very nice soup. Light soup. Onya biankwan. Light soup. Nansu beefy wom. So there was some kind of oil be like that on top, but not the abenquine type. And so he looked and nobody was coming, so he tasted it. And it tasted good. And now, let's go. And he went back to the room. Cat was worried. Where has his friend gone? He came and Cat said, Charlie, where did you go? He said, the air was not coming inside, so I went outside to meet it. He said, hey, be careful, oh. You will find a night woman. Let's wait till daybreak. He said, oh, cha, I know what I'm doing, you know. He kept going out and going and going and going to drink the soup. You know the way it is when you're sinning. You say, oh, Charlie, though, this one, I can get by. Charlie, I'll finish it. Nobody, you know, yeah. Oh, this is cool. It's cool. When you have finished doing it, then you begin to think of the repercussions. Charlie, you see now that Charlie has changed. When they come and find that the soup is finished, what will people say? Oh, what have I done? And dog decided not to go back to the room. So he left. Cat woke up. It is 4:30 at this time. His friend was nowhere to be found. But he saw on the windowsill the number of dog footprints. And so, wise Cat put 2 and 2 together, and he did not get 3. And he decided to leave. He did not go through the window. He opened the door and left. He was going. Cat walking. Just as he got to the outskirts of town, dog appeared. Cha. Are they mentioning my name? Are they mentioning my name? And Cat said, no one has mentioned your name, but you have left your footprints. You have left your footprints. Here is the conversation. We have many forms of names as Ghanaians, yes? There's the day name, Kwesi Kwabna Kojo, and other versions of it, Koshi, and all these things, Ebo, and Ato, all these names. you also have the place of birth. I mean, like the order. Tete, Adole, all these ones, they are happening. There is the name on top of that which your parents will give you. That becomes the contract in your life. And on top of that, you have your surname, which constitutes also a very major portion of your identity. All these names exist, but the most important name is the name that you make for yourself. I ask you this evening, what is your name? I always like this point in the story. Everybody goes quiet. What is your name? When you're not in the office, what do people call you? In your neighborhood, what do people call you? Think about it. What footprints are you leaving as you walk the earth in this life? You're a member of Beja. What contributions are you bringing? What footprints? Are you living in this beautiful Ghana? What contributions, what footprints are you bringing to your culture? I ask you this evening, what is your name? If you like my story, clap for me.
Thank you very much, Sarah Dogbaji, for your story. It's a story that she has told us. It's a story now that we have heard. It's a story we may also tell one day. So, as we say in storytelling, take some and put it in your kneecap. That one day it will come useful.
As they say in Ebe culture, they say, when I was coming from Kisema, and then I arrived at Bema Camp Junction, the traffic light was not working. There was a bit of a jam, and so I slowed down. And then I met it's another story. I met my grandmother, and she said, "Oh, my granddaughter, where are you going this evening?" And I told her that I was coming here. And he said, "Oh, let me check what I can get." So she looked into her floto, Kevi, and this is what she gave me, and said, "When you go, smear this on people's shins." So I have done it.
Okay. Thank you very much. And now, Leonard will also share his story with us, but in a kind form. We will step aside and let us see on the screen. Thank you.
All right, so Dr. Sarah told us a story and then left us very quiet. I'm also going to try and see whether I can leave you in that same way or probably in a different way. Please, the short story, not a picture. The video I brought. Please, the lights. If you could dim the light for us.
Mambara. Lala. Boy. Wamayapam. Kapsalani. Banambara. Nah. Wuna gbana wo dahal barka. Ta yama ka bazang na wo. Mbawo yan. Zaadna. Ban se sine so zuya ma bi ta yama. Ta yigbala. Mbawo yan ani nyonzu. Banzon nango Bukung majire.
Fobia.
Na.
Kumyo. Nanyama. Disorma. Anya shani yelma.
Tumna damdedu yalmi biyarne ba'be ma yalma uyuma sama satuni mitma unjagare
Adi table. Angelo to asema adi table.
Tumna kolgona shin mama shire
Benyelam gome. Benyelam gome. Oi. Kariyan shi ne sai fun wayan mitu ngoma. Da sama wai mi wani macha. Ai mimi kan shi macan ai bin mi an gar shi macan kanya ya boli jagbo sarmin yanga ya boli jagbo sarmin yanga ya boli jagbo sarmin yanga
Morkura Butira Nuhkira Kokpamati Kum Zabrti de ça il a yon la salle. On me l'a kafir chale. La kafir ma. Dites-nous qu'à ça pour ben. La kafir ma d'un coup yen sam. M'fou kar sama. Demo zuma no debo atan. Torin talam bala.
huwa
Yaba. Toka pumpum wula ka tabara. Pom ya bi pom so. Won jidona. Ka bi wo patal puni.
yon lan do samba na gbera ka fishel min bi o dumani dinga to bona chant zant tena awumia yuzu yama nwele zan la gulu da nwele tinye ja ko yele to agar so mama dima aicha bishakam din yan kisa nyen farsini in to yele ma chele awumia isma yo tu t'en tenir devant
Hello, can we give it up again for them? So we have received 2 very short stories. No matter how short they also take us to vast worlds. And this is the world that we share, and that's why they are here to share their work with us. Maybe I'll ask a few questions, we'll have a little conversation, and then we'll open it up also for the audience. So please chew on the stories that you've heard, and then we'll come back to you very soon. But just from the very beginning, can the 2 of you share briefly your motivations when you are carving a story in the moment? What are you looking at? I know you may have told this story before, but in the moment also you are, as they say it in Ebe, you are weaving the story, you are carving the story. So what are the motivations when you do, and how do you get your stories across?
One thing that I consider is the language that the audience can relate to. It is not at every gathering that I'll tell the story and I'll be saying Charlie, because I see a lot of young people, and I speak in a way that they can relate to what the story is saying. There are moments when I would tell the story and there'll be mobile phones and there'll be internet and there'll be everything in there. It's just so that the people can relate, make a connection, see themselves in the world of the story. And let's stop there.
That's that for the moment. And you, Leonard?
Yeah, I think our generation, we were lucky to experience the act of storytelling, where, when you were growing up, you had the opportunity to sit around the fire, and then you listen to stories. And for me, that was where the motivation sparked. But then I felt we had the responsibility to transmit these stories to the new generation. And that is what really pushed me into being a storyteller. And, the more you try to tell stories and people understand, the more you feel a sense of satisfaction. And that alone, the feedback alone serves as motivation that keeps you telling more of such stories. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Hello? Yeah, thank you. Hey. Thank you. So when your stories have settings, we are able to sense the room in which the dog and the cat were sleeping. We are able to know that there was aromas wafting into the place. How do you choose these elements so that even without us being where you were when the story appeared to you, we are able to go with you on this journey? How do you create your imagery?
The thing that I seek to do, another thing that I seek to do in the storytelling is the mouth-to-ear communication. A lot of that is disappearing. Interpersonal, face-to-face conversation is disappearing. A lot of the times we communicate via the screen. So the screen is a screen. It separates us. And so we're trying to keep our interpersonal communication going. And so when there are ways in which face-to-face communication catches attention, I'm not sure if I can put my fingers on all these things and say them, because sometimes I feel them and I respond to the impulse without reflecting on why I'm making which choices. But I'm sure when I talked about Airbnb, everybody quickly connected to that. Isn't it? And once you have an Airbnb, you know that it can be in somebody's house. And it can be just one room that has been set aside for the business. And so the kitchen is next door. It is completely relatable. But in another setting, I would describe the venue differently based on the home structure that they are or the social structure or community, what do they have guest houses in that space? It's not when you go to Mafi the Vima, there are no guest houses. You will go into somebody's house. So the story will be told differently. So these are some of them. Have I answered your question? Okay.
So with you, Leonard, at least in what we've seen, you also give us a setting. It's specific. It could also be general. But there are other things you do with the setting that enhance the telling of the story. For example, there's a very deliberate use of sound effects. Can you tell us this process and how do you get these sound effects and the sense of suspense that you create with these sounds? And how do you make the sounds? Because I know that you don't use borrowed sound or downloaded sound from the internet. It's sound that you create yourself. Tell us about that.
Yeah, lucky for me, especially where we are coming from the north, most of the traditional stories that we know, the settings are still available. I mean, you can still find the thatch houses, and that's like the things that we used to hear in the stories. So for me, the setting is part of like the story. It's like a character. So if you don't get the right location, the setting, then you are missing a character in the story. And that kind of helps to distinguish your film from probably a film that is supposed to be shot here, where you might not get like the setting in its natural environment. And it's the same thing with sound. Initially, when I started filmmaking, I had paid little attention to sound until I got to a point where I realized that sound was the next important thing apart from the story. And lucky for me, I had one of my students, I lecture at the nursing training college. So I had one of my students who, after completing, was more interested in sound design. So I established a sound studio just close to our film studio. And then he started working over there. And then together, we kind of learned about sound. We paid more attention to Foley. And then we started harnessing and harvesting our local drums. We have these drummers over there. So we go over there, we tell them to play, we record it, and then we take them as samples, redesign those sounds, and then we kind of use them in a certain way that it sounds local, but then it's you can feel the blend of that local and modern into it because of our interest in reaching out at a larger audience. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, for me, for the sample of story that we saw, the sound effects was very present, but not that alone. So I'll start with you now. They say you pay attention to costume, you pay attention to makeup, but also special effects. There was a particular moment when salt is sprinkled onto a skull and then it disappears. And it's done in a way that is actually very believable. So it's not like in some films where there's a magical disappearance. I mean, this is also magical, but it draws you into the make-believe. And so I know that special effects is one of your passions. So can you share with us your relationship with special effects?
Yeah, I actually started paying more attention to special effects when I did a general study on Ghanaian films. And a lot of literature have been written about it. And one of the negative things we hear mostly about Ghanaian films has to do with the poor and very bad visual effects mostly found in their films. And, we have more stories that involves magic. Hence, if you want to communicate this effectively, it should be believable. But unfortunately, most of filmmakers do not really pay more attention to their visual effects. So with that retrospective study, I decided to pay more attention to visual effects. I developed so much interest, and I must say that that was the only point I got to realize that the education I had when I was in SS was now relevant, because the kind of softwares I started using, I started seeing the application of some of the trigonometries, those things we were learning in maths, and I saw where they became very relevant. And I must say that, frankly speaking, without that secondary level of education, it would be very, very difficult for someone to excel in the visual effects, because it's all about like maths, using softwares like Maya, Houdini, because you must understand the 3D space. So for me, this was something that really kept me going. And YouTube became like my reference point. I kept going over there and then learning and learning. And I think I'm still learning, but I'm quite impressed with how far I've gone. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now with Sarah, in the moment, it's very difficult to use special effects. But that said, you still do use some elements. There are pauses, there are breaths. There's even sometimes call for song, or even the audience brings in. So how do you harness all these things to give impetus to your story?
We use that to create suspense. There are moments when there is narration. There are moments when there is enactment. Storytelling is a combination of all kinds of art forms. There's this story, it's from Ekropong, when a part of the story is sung. Obamofo mampo na brabrain trini. Eya otrin na mesikum. Abra wuserikum na ujinahi na nenifa so. Obamofo mampo seutia mewa. It's the story about the hunter and how the leopard traced his way to his house and found his son, and the hunter was out. And the way the singing goes, it elevates the mood to a certain level that the emotional connection to the story is heightened. There's all kinds of aesthetic, avenues that we draw from, and to make all this is about getting our audience to be part of the story, to be in the world of the story, and to, relish the moment. So all the things, the acting, the voice moderation, the singing, the interludes from the audience, because they are also participating in the telling. They are doing creative listening. So there are points when they are moved to contribute, and so you give them the space so that we do that communal creative process that everybody enjoys. Am I answering?
Yes. Thank you very much. Leonard, in a prior conversation with you, you speak specifically about your approach to costuming your characters. In a sense that, there could be a general costume designer, and the costume designer could have a plan, a scheme. But there's something particularly that you do. Can you share with us the fact that you assign the characters in the piece the duty to also go and look, so that it's not you imposing a costume or even the characterization onto them? Can you tell us this, your process, which is quite different from what is normally done in film production?
Yeah, in actual sense, I quickly realized that we we're lacking very professional costumiers to be able to bring like diverse looks to costumes that people wear. So mostly when they give the contract to one person, you can almost see similarities in the design. So I thought through carefully, and then I said, okay, fine. The only way I can really achieve, that wide range of diversity was first to bring the actors together, discuss with them each person's costume, and then I give them the money to go and buy the material. In that way, they are all likely to go and get different materials. Then I tell them to hand sew it themselves. Since they are not proper tailors, there is high chance that whatever they will sew looks so different from each other. And then that kind of introduces that uniqueness, and it removes that uniformity from their costume. So this was an approach that I adopted, and I think it worked so well for me in most of my movies. And the truth is that I feel most of these challenges mostly present an equal opportunity for you to be creative. And not necessarily to just see challenges to be like hindrances, but then you should understand that anytime you find a challenge, there's always a creative way to go about it, and that could bring about like a unique form of creativity that you probably didn't think of. Yes, so that's my approach.
Thank you very much. Now, at this moment, I will also ask if the two of you have questions for each other, or in observing the work that each other does. Do you have any commentary? And then after that, we'll go to the audience.
Yes. That was a very strong story.
Okay.
Ah! Oh my goodness. Very, 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 very strong narration. I mean, the plot, I can't find the words. Impressive.
Thank you very much.
And I like the way you have kept it as close to the culture as possible. The people speaking their language and being at peace in themselves. They are not seeking to impress anybody. The characters are completely believable. Oh, well done plus well done.
Thank you very much. In actual sense, I picked up this story from someone like Dr. Sarah. I'm not a very good storyteller. The person told the story, and I decided to translate the story onto the screen. So in one way or the other, I'm a very good storyteller in terms of bringing stories to life. So I have a question for you. Is it possible, do you have a very nice story that you might want us to put it on the screen?
I have plenty. How many do you want?
Let's start with the best one.
Wow.
Yes.
I think I'm very happy because this is a moment. Often people say that, oh, Ghanaian writers are not coming together with filmmakers and they're not doing this. But I think in moments like this, we see that there's a potential. And I can only imagine what will happen in a few years when the
I will tell you the story that we will use. As we are approaching a politically active space, I will tell you the story that comes from the Volta region, which talks about, very interesting, democracy. What is the story? In the animal kingdom, they all had an animal we call a zee, and it's been translated to be the bear, but I think it's the buffalo. The buffalo was the king. And the animal said, no, this king is boring. Oh, no, we don't like this one. Now I'm doing it deliberately. Okay. No, we don't like this one. So we want the wolf to be the king. And everybody voted for the wolf to be king. And so Buffalo lost his seat. Yes? And the wolf became king. And the first thing he did was to declare that from today to go, nobody shall eat anybody for food. From now onwards, there's total freedom. Come and see the rabbits, the chickens, the grass cutters, all the mice, everybody who would otherwise hide is now strolling freely. Do you know what he was doing? Free range. He became the king. Everybody is free, but not everybody is free. He only has to go and stand behind his wall and come back in. Somebody's missing. No, he doesn't have to run. Do you see where we are going?
Yes, yes.
This is the story of how the goat and the dog became domestic animals. We will continue.
The conversation is becoming interesting, and I don't want to keep it all to myself, so I want to open up to the public. If you have any questions, comments, or input, we would like you to raise your hand, and then the mic will come to you.
Hello, Leonard.
Hello.
Thank you for, like Sarah said, it was powerful, extremely. I'm interested in the shots, the close shots that you chose of the hand clapping, close up of the people's faces, the death toll, the killer toll, and then one particular shot of the woman before the girl went off. I think I wanted you to, I don't know who she was, what's her story. I was interested in who she was, watching as the girl was being told and the cola nut being put in her mouth to stop her from speaking. I just wondered if you could just tell us a bit more about who that woman was.
Yes, yes. Yeah, thank you very much.
Part two.
Yes, yes. I think my choice of shots and my close-ups are mostly deliberate because, you know, there is that difficulty in trying to communicate a story that is strongly traditional and rural, because if it's getting out of the traditional boundaries, you need to communicate these things very clearly because people don't understand. So they need to emphasize on those parts. However, because it's a short story, you could have just taken a guess that could have been the girl's mom. Yes, and in this case, it's so. So if it's something that we are to expand, then you probably understand her role. Yes.
It's not my question. But for me, when I saw that shot, what came to my mind was woman power. And yeah, and she knows that the salvation will come from the woman. Yeah. And there is a writing, and all these things went on in my mind when I saw that. There's a writing on the new Polo, is it the Polo? Accra Central. There's a sports place beside the lorry station. There's a madman who writes on the walls, and he has written something. Only women can save this nation. And when we saw it, I was with Raven, and we wanted to take a picture. And guess what happened? When we took the picture, there was a woman porter caught in the frame with the writing. Very poetic. So when I saw that, that is what came to my mind. Very, very powerful.
My question is to you, Dr. Sarah. The story that you just told, are you able to tell the same story probably in Ewe, since that is your mother tongue, and what is the experience when you are telling the same story, but in this case in Ewe? And then to Leonard, I want to find out the language that they were speaking in the film. Thank you.
Yes, thanks to God, I have proficiency in 3 Ghanaian languages. I speak Ewe, I speak Ga, I speak Twi, and by the grace of God, this woman sitting here, I speak Fanti. You know, and you see, language is the vehicle of philosophy. So the thing we are communicating is thought. So the story is a stringing of thoughts. So the choice of words will be different. When I try to tell the same story in Ewe, it will have entirely new dynamics because they have to reflect certain specific Ewe cultural elements to make Ewe's connect to the story. The one I told is an abridged version so that it will be general, that everybody can relate to it. So I can tell it in Ewe, and I can tell it in Twi, and I can tell it in Ga. I originally got the story from a Twi source.
Yeah, thank you. I've always tried to stay true to every story that I get. If an Ashanti person tells me a story, if I'm shooting it, I'll let the people speak in Twi because they'll feel very comfortable and they can carry themselves. If the story has to do with the northern region, Tamale, then they have to speak their native language. So the language they were speaking actually is Dagbanle. And I try to put a subtitle there because I feel sometimes the essence of the story is retained when they speak it in the original language. Yeah.
Okay.
2 more questions.
Yes. I have
Okay,
the
yeah,
mic.
go on.
So, first of all, comments, and then I have a question for Dr. Sarah and then Leonard. My name is Amuma Oto. 2 years ago, I had an opportunity to study in the School of Performing Arts, right? And I met 2 amazing women who drew my attention to the power of language in expression, art expression, because I was studying theater then, acting, directing. One of them is Dr. Sarah here, and the other is Dr. Ekwekuma. I don't know if she's here. Okay, she's here, right. So it isn't surprising that your story is also so powerful because I guess it was rendered in their language and made the acting much more believable. They weren't doing too much, especially for camera, where the camera captures so much and the truth as it is. Secondly, so that's one of my comments, right? And also did love the story, and I saw it differently. I mean, I saw it in the sense of the leadership, political nature of the story. Then Dr. Sarah also speaks about the wolf becoming a leader, because I believe that everything rises and falls with leadership. I don't want to say too much, but you know, our situation now and the terrain as it is now, and the atmosphere in Ghana now, you could tell that so much can be done, especially in the space of art, in literature, in writing, book, whatever it is, if leadership, you know, it takes the bull by the horn and does the right thing. I won't say so much. My question is that, seeing the art forms that are presented here today, the storytelling art form, which has to do with the folktale version, and then the newer technology version, the screen. There was this series that I was watching called American Gods. And basically, towards the end, it looked like there was a war between the old gods and the newer gods, which is technology. And I sort of seem to be seeing that here. Now, my question is that, for both of you, suggest we balance the storytelling from my grandparents and the newer version of storytelling now, so we do not lose the essence and the power of folk tales, as well as also do not undermine the power that the tool of screens can bring in pushing these stories out of our space to the global stages. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for your presentations. even more impressed with the audiovisual storyteller. Because I see that it's a story of justice, of power, and superstition. And they often say that our audiovisual stories, our movie industry is superstitious industry. Every Ghanaian movie or Nigerian movie is superstition. And there are a lot of arguments about that because, well, we are a superstitious society, that's a fact. But there's also a new generation of people, Ghanaians, young people, who are not superstitious, who are scientific in their thinking. And so I know that depicting superstition in the story is part of the reality, our reality. But as a young storyteller, I don't know if you're taking a paradigm shift where you tell the story of a modern society, a progressive society, more than superstitious, because you talk about justice, you're talking about power. There can be resolutions without magic, without superstition. But then it is that you are not a storyteller, you are interpreting somebody's story, like you're saying. So I want to know if you're focusing or you are deliberately, as part of your agenda, to move away from the superstition, because it does not really represent who we are. Because the argument is that problems are not solved, our modern day problems are not solved by superstition. They are solved by science, by thinking. And so maybe we should depict that side of us, that we can think up solutions rather than conjuring up solutions to our problems. Thank you very much.
We have a question here. Should I have a quick take on that one? The problem was described with sodium chloride. The problem was dissolved with sodium chloride in science.
Thank you. My question is, you said if you are doing a story, you would, this goes to Leonard, you stay true to the culture. And my question is, as a director, the first one is, as a director, how do you stay true to the culture, especially if you're doing a culture that you don't know? How do you stay true to it as a director? Because you are in charge of everything, cinematography, music, this, that. How do you stay true to it, and how do you connect all these dots and connect all the various people together? And as a director too, is it that in going to other spaces, do you still work with the same people, or you look for new people, maybe in terms of who know the culture, to come make the story come to life and be true to the culture? Or that's the first one. Then the second one is, as being a VFX artist, there's a very thin line, because effect is very not outside, because we are learning from, how do I say it? Learning from, let me just say, outside to now bring it to our context, to now bring it to culture. Now that thin line, in the sense of creating an effect, creating an effect and making it more like true to us, in the sense that, like, I connect to it and I watch this effect and I'm like, yeah, you just feel it, where it doesn't feel quite outside. Let me just say it like that again. I'm sorry, but it doesn't feel outside, but you feel like you really connect to it, because that thin line is there. Sometimes you watch some effect and you just see that it's just not in place. It's out of place. That thin line, like, how do you balance it? Yeah, these are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe we'll start from here and then go back. I think I'm very much aware of the tendency to quickly drift to just populating your film with just visual effects because you can do it. But you need to be measured and then really know whether this is relevant to help tell the story or not. So in this case, you might have realized that when the chief stepped on the ground, there was no visual effects there, but you could connect the stepping on the ground to what happened to the accused thief. For me, this is an impartial effects that you probably had to connect, okay? But then the part that we needed some form of dissolve or disintegration, this is where the effect is. And that's relevant because I cannot just let something vanish just like that. But there should be a process in the vanishing. It should break down and then gradually go away as a dust. And that process required the visual effects. So there's a process, and for me, I think it's just a tool that I use to tell the story when it is needed. And then speaking of culture, I think I have a very short video to show you, because I anticipated a question like that. So I just made, please, the number 6. Please play number 6.
I will not lift my chair.
Just take my chair out. You learn from history.
Na yirma ka basan na. Mbawla.
This is the behind scene.
Na yirma ka basan.
Fomia.
Na. Ma provoje tala.
Yes, hey, see, this is what I always said. You, the Kwambala, stop doing this. If you do that, if the chief notices that you are not happy, then there's a problem for you too. So yours is to make sure that you can look at each other, yes, but you can.
The expression can be in the face. All right. So, okay.
Someone to love it now.
Cut. All right. So in this case, I had to bring in a prince from the chief palace who understands how elders communicate. Because if you disagree with the chief, you cannot make any noise. It's just from your facial expression, you look at each other as elders. So I rely so much on those who know the culture. And then personally, I do research a lot. And most of my research are video documented. Yes, so I make reference to them. So everything that I really want to do, I make sure that I pay attention to the culture and the traditions, and then I bring on set someone who understands it, because some of these things are so minor, you might think it's not relevant, but it is. Because when the Gombe person watch this and see the elders talk, if the chief talks, then the person will get to realize that, no, this is not our culture. So he was there to correct us, to let us understand that if the chief said something that you didn't like, it was dangerous to talk back, because you might be the next person to die. So you can only express it in your face.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah Dogbaji and Leonard, for this wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
Is there another question?
There were some questions.
So let's just
There were
have
some questions.
the last two, because we need to move on.
No, there were some questions that we didn't.
Oh, existing question unanswered. Okay. Okay, then if the existing question is answered, we will move on to the next event. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I think your question is about making the stories relevant to the contemporary Ghanaian. I think I've addressed that in different ways. Oh? What exactly? Mm-hmm. I think this is working very well, because we are still on the screen anyway, but then the level of acculturation that the screen brings has been mediated here. A lot of the times we do things for the screen and then immediately we look for Western standards. Do you see? So when we begin to do these westernized perspectives of things, they are not always consistent with what the practices are in the various Ghanaian cultures. So I think this is a very good example of how our Ghanaianness can be sustained even on the screen, because it holds a lot of relevance for the development of the society. We have to know who we are, and we have to, work in that direction. So even though we are creating for the global village, it has to be culturally relevant to be globally valuable. And so there's the question about art, that the art and science person. There's something very interesting that I'll tell you. You see, the sciences serve the humanities. I have paused so that you process it. This is it. So a lot of scientific discoveries were first done through art, artistic expressions. You can find that out. There's so many examples. And then somebody once said, and I stole it, I'm keeping it and making it mine. And he says, scientists are seeking to climb a steep hill. By the time they get there, they will find the artists already sitting there drinking tea. Because we are ahead of science. We speak it, and they find the relevance and seek to find or decode it. I don't know how to explain it, but you find the scientific terms. So it is science first. It is the arts first before science. I know you don't agree with me. It's what? It's part of the art.
Yeah.
You see, the word superstition, you are saying it in English. How would you say it in your language? This is the thing. There's a language imbalance there. The word you are using is in a different language. And then these stories that we are telling, they are grounded in an oral culture. They are based in orality. And now we are looking and scrutinizing the stories with literate mindsets. The two will not agree unless you bring yourself into the situation before you can take from there and make sense of it in today's literate environment. This is what I think.
Yeah. I think we can sort of close here. The tail line event was paneled by Dr. Sarah Dogbaji and Leonard. Thank you all for being here. This is almost the end of PEJA 2023. We are gearing for live across Africa in a few minutes. So thank you very much for being a great audience. Bye.
Thank you very much.